Hello, everyone. This is Bill Roach and my wife Molly, and we are doing a Facebook Live video tonight. I'm sorry that the lighting is a little low. We just had it set up here, but we want to discuss our student loan success story with you. And the big issues that we want to discuss is really the fact that so many people today that we see in America, we're finding a student loan crisis. So many individuals think that just because they can make the monthly payment or because they can finish their degrees with the hopes of making more money that they can actually afford it. Well, we found our marriage in the midst of one of those situations, and we want to share with you our story, some things that we learned, and how we got out of that. So, Molly, I think we're going to just discuss a few things here about how we kind of got into this mess.
So we started before we got married, and we talked about finances and a few different things. And so I really wasn't budgeting, wasn't on a budget, didn't really think about a budget. And so it often created stress because if an emergency came up, I had a flat tire or something happened, then I was like, how am I going to pay for this? So my husband and I sat down, and he encouraged me to be on a budget and that I needed to be spending wisely because I didn't really honestly know where my money was going. If I was going out to eat or spending stuff or whatever, I just wasn't budgeting.
One of the things I know we discussed is a lot of people think, well, I don't make enough money to actually be on a budget. When the reality is, if you don't make any money, you can't afford to not be on a budget because it's that important to actually know where every dollar is going.
And that's what I thought. I thought, well, I don't make very much money, so why is it important to be on a budget when, like Bill said, it's more important to be on a budget? So
one of the things that we did early on is we had this conversation that was we need to not use credit at all. And I remember one time when I was in seminary, where I first went, they actually had a no debt policy. And I was like all other students before I got there and said, well, I'll finance my degrees. And one of the presidents and mentors of mine said, no, you need to try to do things without going into debt for it. And one thing that we started to do when we met is we ended up going to Providence Baptist Church, and we took a Crown Financial class. And there they taught us great principles about finances and how to budget and really to work together as a family. And some of the issues that we ran into is that we both had not very much funding from our undergraduates, and then by God's grace I was able to get a master's degree at Southern Evangelical Seminary. I didn't have to take out any debt for it, and by God's grace with the cooperative program with the Southern Baptist Convention, so much of the THM and PhD that we funded out of pocket at Southeastern was paid for. But where we ran into troubles was really with an out-of-state master's degree. I don't know if you want to discuss that some.
Yeah, so I decided to go to the University of South Carolina, and it was out of state. It was a distance education program, so it was very expensive to be out of state, and it was a 3-year program. And the other thing that we ran into during the whole process was interest. So interest just racks up. At one point, I think we were paying $30 a day for
Think about that,
the
$30
master's
a day to pay for a master's degree.
So we realized we had a few options when we started to pay off the debt. So the first option was that we pay the minimum payment. I continue at my same job, and we get it paid off in 10 years. The second option was that I switched jobs to work for a not-for-profit. We pay the minimum payment, and then at the end of the 10 years, I have to work for 30 hours a week for 10 years at a not-for-profit. Then the government will write off whatever is left, but we get taxed for the interest or the amount that's left. So that was option number 2, the student loan forgiveness. And then option number 3, which was what we chose, was to pay off the debt as quickly as possible, working extra hours, because when we first looked at the amount that we owed versus how much we were making, it would have taken a long time. So we knew we had to work extra jobs, work extra days, really sacrifice, live on less, we love leftovers, not buy many clothes. The Share Shop was a huge blessing to us through Southeastern, through clothes and different foods and things that we needed. We were okay with not going on vacations or saying no to things because we knew we wanted to be debt-free and to start our family off that way. And then for birthdays and Christmas, we also decided, and this is what our family has decided. We're not saying it's wrong if you're not doing it this way, but these were our personal decisions to just do very little, a card or go out to eat, but not buy expensive gifts because we wanted to be debt-free more than we wanted to have all this stuff. And God really redeemed this story. It's been, amazing.
So a couple things to think about with it is, a lot of people think the concept of I'm just going to make small monthly payments for a number of years. But the reality is you're going to end up paying more than double whatever that student loan is because of the interest that comes about. And I think another issue that people run into is they think, well, I'm going to do student loan forgiveness, which really means, like she was saying, you're going to pay for 10 years and you're going to make close to nothing during that time. But what you don't realize is whatever they forgive, they turn into taxable income, and you have to have that placed against you at that year, and you have to pay taxes against it. So let's say they write off $50,000. Well, you got to pay taxes on $50,000 according to your pay scale. So that's really not benefiting you. You've made payments for 10 years, and then you receive a very high tax income. So I think, in short, a couple things that we just want to say as we summarize this is that don't think just because you can make a monthly payment you can really afford it. We have really overpriced education, and people are willing to do almost anything for it. And I think another thing is that there's good ways and bad ways to pay it off. And really the best way is not to look for some government program to help you that's subsidized by somebody else, but to roll up your sleeves and pay for it, because that's the best way to get ahead of the interest and to get it off of your back.
It is a lot of hard work. There's a lot of hours, a lot of sacrifice, but it's definitely worth it.
We ended up taking sometimes 2 and 3 extra jobs at a time in order to up our income and get our expenses down. And the key is you got a budget. You have to give every dollar a name.
Amount that we were making, our income, that our budget needed to stay the same, because then we wouldn't be putting any more towards loans.
And finally, I think in our marriage, what we needed to do is we needed to work as a team. And that really meant that we had to agree on where every dollar was going and how it was spent in order to get things paid for. So let's just finalize it in these few things. So here's the big question that a lot of people have. How much? Well, we had, from the education we received, we had 2 undergraduates that really didn't cost very much money. But we had a car that we paid off, the out-of-state master's that was about 85% of what we paid. Then we paid cash for a THM and a PhD for a whopping $200,000 in 39 months paid for. Over 70% of our income during that time. So we want to encourage you. It's not because we did anything really special. We just tried to budget our money well, and we tried to live according to God's principles. And we want to say this not to act as though we're better than anybody else, but just to say God's providence can redeem these situations. So if you're listening to this and you have any other questions about our story, how we did things, what we really want to do is encourage you that God can do amazing things in the midst of these situations. And I encourage you to get books like Dave Ramsey, listen to him, listen to things like Crown Financial, because God can do amazing things with it. So any other things you want to add?
Yeah, I think just being on a budget, and the whole time we continued to tithe and just be faithful to the church during that time. We felt like that's very important. God has given us all of this money to give some back to Him. So we are just thankful to be done. And so thank you for listening to our story.
And we just want to say, as they always say on Dave Ramsey's show,
We're debt free!